Hello everyone, my name is Rochelle Innocent and I'm the founder and CEO of Project Purpose. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Our community is focused on fostering the intellectual and character development in children. We do this through our parent-child workshops that focus on 4 themes: autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept, in order to cultivate grit, perseverance, and resilience in each child. Our overarching mandate at Project Purpose is to renew and rebuild families, communities, and relationships. Our YouTube platform provides us with an opportunity to have discussions on all topics that relate to families, communities, and relationships with ourselves, as well as with others, with a primary focus on mental health and education. More precisely, the way that the institutions of mental health and education have played a role and play a role in our societies at large. These discussions and debates provide us with an opportunity to think critically about what needs to change within these structures in order for us to live up to our bold slogan: support, protect, and empower each child through youth-focused development, better known as leadership in juvenescence. We recognize that in valuing our children's leadership potential, that also translates as recreating and co-creating our environments socially and politically in order for our children to thrive. And for those of you who are especially curious, we also write thought pieces on our website, so please feel free to check those out once you're finished with this video. Now, as is the YouTube convention, please do subscribe, hit that post notification bell so that you're aware of every time we post, and of course, if you like the content and you want to keep the conversations going, like, comment, and share this video. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back. This week, our focus is on mental wellness, and I'm very excited about our topic, which is going to be 5 ways to stay grounded during stressful situations. And of course, because the first, segment on mental wellness, I showed you a few stretches to help you reverse the effects of having your hip flexors positioned in one area all day. And I want to show you a different stretch today as well. So for those of you who are keen, please make sure to stay for the 10 or 12-minute stretch after our discussion on how to stay grounded during stressful situations. This is a topic that I'm very happy to cover because I've not always been grounded during stressful situations. So it's definitely been a work in progress. I wouldn't call myself hot-headed by any means, but definitely high-strung, which I think I've mentioned in a few videos. And it's taken me a few years to recognize that not everything deserves my energy. And to give a couple of examples, I remember my first serious relationship out of university. One of the stocking stuffers that his mother bought me was that book. I'm not sure if you remember this book. It was a bestseller at that time, but it was called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And I didn't even see his mother all that frequently. It's not like we communicated all the time, and yet she felt inclined to get me that book as a stocking stuffer. So I think that gives you a little bit of an example of how high-strung I was in my younger 20s. And also, I've always sort of been an advocate for social justice and an advocate for, standing your own ground. And it took me a long time to recognize that, there's value and there's wisdom in choosing your battles. Not everyone who, wants your attention deserves your attention, and not every battle is worth fighting. Some battles are best won when you walk away from them. And that comes, again, with just staying grounded and potentially adopting certain values and principles that will allow you to stay grounded when heat is starting to rise, and helping you to stay grounded when you're in situations where you really do feel as though you're starting to lose your cool a little bit. So here are my 5 tips, and again, these aren't set in stone. These are the things that have helped me on my journey towards, staying grounded and keeping collected in situations where, if it was me 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I might have lost my cool. And I would love to hear what some of your tips are and ways that you stay grounded during stressful situations. And stressful situation, really, that is relative. It can be stressful situations by way of, with family. It can be at work. It can be on your own as you launch your own business, whatever the case may be. I think that these 5 tips are transversal and they will help you regardless of the context or the scenario. So the first tip I wanted to give you was an emotionality check. Now, an emotionality check we always hear as, one of those, tidbits of wisdom. It's always good to ask yourself, hey, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? And I'm saying it's more of a necessity. It's not just like a nice thing to do. It's something you absolutely must do, especially if you're about to engage with other people. It's always good to know like where your head is at before you enter into a scenario where you're having to do some impression management. And one thing that I will tell you is people know you better than you think. So it's easy to assume that you have, the acting skills of one of the top A celebrities, but most of us do not. Most of us, even though we think that we're great actors, the people who see us on a day-to-day basis can read right through it. So give those around you some credit and recognizing that you can't fake it till you make it with everybody, not the people who know you or who spend a significant amount of time with you and pay attention. So when you do an emotionality check, be transparent with yourself. I mean, it's one thing to try to hide your emotions if you think it's best, when you're talking with other people, but to try to hide your emotions from yourself is something that I found very counterintuitive. The best way to manage emotions is to recognize them, acknowledge them, and then to put them somewhere, respectfully until you can get out of a context or get out of a scenario where that's not necessarily the best alignment. But trying to pretend like you don't feel that emotion has never really been a strategy that has been helpful. So it's always best to acknowledge the emotion and to recognize that if you're feeling a lot of it, the strategy to kind of glaze over that emotion and suppress it and assume that your friends and family and those who care about you are not going to recognize that you're in an emotional state, probably not the best strategy. That brings us to our second point about the emotionality check is don't overreach. So if you're in an emotional state where you know that you're not, going to be able to present your best self and you're stepping into an environment that perhaps might need you to be your best self, it's better to protect yourself and rearrange things in your schedule just a little bit if that is at all possible. For me, it's, again, I've mentioned before, prevention is better than cure. And overreaching is when you think that you can handle a situation not based on past experience that you've been able to handle it successfully before, but based on wishful thinking. So recognize when, if it is the case that you're managing very strong emotions and you're going into a scenario where you have to keep calm and you have to stay grounded, it's very important that you know yourself well enough to know if whether or not you being able to keep a level head in that conversation is overreaching or something that you know for sure you can do based on past experience. So that's the first one, emotionality check. Always do this, especially when you're about to interact with other people, new people, or people that you're familiar with. Always know how you feel and then navigate accordingly. So if you know that you're in a state where you're not, the best version of yourself to be socializing with other people and you need to kind of put your best foot forward, then, do the best that you can to kind of preserve yourself and to protect yourself in that situation if you don't want to lose your cool. There's this movie actually that I had watched on Amazon Prime. I think it's called Adam at the Wedding. And, feel free to watch it, but it's a perfect example of someone who A, is not necessarily aligned with their emotions, and B, definitely overreached. So it's pretty much about a gentleman who attends the wedding of his ex, and they had just broken up maybe a year and a half ago, and she quickly, moved on, and it was an 8-year relationship, and you saw him very quickly unravel very publicly. It was quite the crash and burn. So that's maybe a very extreme example of what happens when A, you don't do an emotionality check, B, you assume that people don't see through the facade of being okay, and C, you overreach. So definitely try not to do those things. My second tip for staying grounded is choosing to respond versus react. Now, what is the difference between responding and reacting? Responding is about choice. Reacting is about giving other people the power to sort of exercise a specific state out of you. And for me, this is something that has definitely come with a lot of years and maturity. This isn't something that I came out of the womb being able to do. It was very easy. I'm someone who I don't like being teased very, very much. In fact, I really, it's funny because I like to like have fun and laugh, but I don't like to be the butt end of jokes, not necessarily anyways. And I've developed a thicker skin now, but as I was growing up, I was very sensitive. So I always took the things people said fairly seriously. So it was easy to get under my skin. And I think over the years, I've realized that not everything in the environment requires a reaction, and my reactions are expensive. I mean, they're very emotionally taxing. They take a lot of energy out of me. As my energy became more spread thin, as there are more buckets and areas where I wanted to put my energy, I became much more selective about who got access to my energy if it wasn't necessarily a place where I wanted my energy to go. And that sort of helped me to transition from being this very reactionary human being to being someone who's more or less responsive. So choosing my moments when I decided to engage with specific events. Now this choice, it kind of, it falls along sort of a spectrum. So there are a few questions that I ask myself before I choose to respond, or in determining how even I choose to respond to something that is requesting my attention or requesting a reaction from me, I guess. And so the first one is intention versus perception. And this one is really key because they say that life is 10% reality and 90% perception, and that is so true. That has proven to be so true for me. And a lot of the times the reactions that we have with other people are based on the assumptions we have about why they are doing or why they are saying the things that they're saying. And this check, intention versus perception, is something that has helped me really be mindful about the way that I respond to those around me, and making sure that I'm not, shooting from the hip and responding adversely unnecessarily, and then, we have to kind of backpedal because of misunderstanding. So I always try to see, what's this person's intention? I recognize I'm being triggered, but is this person intentionally trying to trigger me, or am I just perceiving it as such? And the best way to figure out and to create a bridge between intention and perception is to ask clarifying questions. So before you react, when you choose to respond, you want to make sure that you're responding to the right thing. So it comes with asking clarifying questions, paraphrasing what they said back to you. It's okay, you said this is my understanding of what it is that you said, and make sure you get confirmation. You always want to make sure that your understanding of what someone said is confirmed before you go ahead and react on top of it. So I always like to first ask clarifying questions, paraphrase what it is that they said right back to them. Sometimes it involves reflecting emotion, because it is often the time that we maybe misconstrue the emotionality sort of being relayed to us, and how we ensure that we're even aligned on an emotional wavelength. It's I'm feeling tension. Am I getting tension from you? Are you frustrated, or am I misreading something here? Asking questions before responding is so beneficial in ensuring you don't end up with your foot in your mouth. So making sure that you build a bridge between perception and intention. Always try to respond based on what that person's intent was instead of how you perceived it to be, because there can be a huge gap between those things that can create issues that that could have easily been avoided. Another option is strategize before anger. So this means you know yourself well enough. For me, I'm fairly slow to anger, but I can feel the needle rising. So if I'm talking to someone and I feel a couple prickles here and there, I know at what point I need to disengage, or at what point I need to pivot the conversation so that I don't reach anger, because I would prefer not to be angry. I find anger is a very consuming emotion, and it takes a lot of energy out of me, and afterwards I need a nap. So I think finding different strategies to help yourself from reaching a very heightened emotional state is definitely a bonus in staying grounded and and staying grounded during stressful situations. So always keeping a tab on the emotions that are sort of being triggered within you as you're in that conversation. If you feel like your emotions are rising, knowing when to cut off or cut out of that conversation diplomatically, politely, returning to that conversation when you know you have a level head. If you realize that you're sort of starting to spiral, it's always best to just put a just kind of put a pause to that conversation, and every conversation can be paused. I think we have, difficult conversations with the intention of reaching a resolution. And we are all understanding of the fact, like, if you're not in a headspace where you can arrive at a resolution, then that person, I'm sure, who wants a resolution as well, will be more than understanding, and you needing to take a couple of steps back to take a deep breath so that you can re-engage with a level head. And then my last tip for choosing to respond versus reacting is assigning value to your energy. And I kind of alluded to this in the first couple of points that I made, but my energy has a lot of value to me. There's a lot of places where I want my energy to go, and I just don't have the bandwidth to give my energy to everyone who would like a piece of it. So recognizing that your energy has value, and if there is a situation that is requiring more energy than you're ready to give, then opt out, disengage. You don't have to respond or be at the beck and call of every situation or person that requires or that thinks that they have right to your energy. Not everyone or everything does. So recognizing the value that comes with where you put your time and energy, and then being selective with where you put it. So I guess this brings us to number 3, which is know your limits. Again, people know you better than you think. So it's always a better sort of return on investment for you to know yourself at least just as well as those around you know you. So know your limits, play within it. I think that might be the OLG slogan here in Canada for those of you who are watching from outside of Canada. So that involves a little bit of introspection. That involves just, again, being able to manage, to monitor your emotions as they come up. And then knowing at what point you need to disengage, because you don't, again, want to be in a situation where you've lost your cool or, you're not representing yourself the way that you would like to. I don't think we always are obligated to represent our best selves, but I think we always do ourselves proud if we walk away from a conversation or from a situation where we feel proud of the way we chose to respond in that given situation. I think none of us need to experience, the regret or the shame that comes with losing our head or allowing people to kind of get us to, hitting our buttons and getting us to lose our cool. And then we're like, oh man, I wish I handled it this way. We always have the ability to handle it the way we want to handle it, and to walk away feeling proud of the way that we engaged if we play within our limits. And that involves a little bit of self-awareness, of course. So my 4th tip for how to stay grounded in stressful situations is getting comfortable with silence. And this is really important because not everyone is comfortable with silence. And for me, silence is the greatest, most underestimated weapon of communication that there is. And this is, of course, in a situation where that the first thing that comes out of your mouth might not be the best thing, so you take your time. And this can be very neutral. Like for me, I like to take on a thinking posture so that my silence isn't weird and awkward. But even if it becomes weird and awkward, if I'm not ready to speak, if I know that the words that are going to come out of my mouth are not a best representation of the way that I want to show up in that context, I choose silence. I'll choose to sit and dwell on the words and on the way that I want to respond, regardless of how much time that takes. And I think that it's a great strategy to just learn that sometimes what the moment requires for us to walk away feeling proud of the way that we represented ourselves in that moment is silence. So learning to be comfortable with silence, learning to sit in silence when the person's waiting for a response, but you can't give the best response for that specific scenario is another tip that I wanted to leave you with. So my last, so number 5 for today is choice of 3. So choice of 3 is sort of my own internal strategy for knowing if I'm still too emotional to respond. And why is it choice of 3? Because I know, I'm articulate enough, I'm eloquent enough where if I'm upset, I can very eloquently tell someone off. And of course, no matter how articulate or well spoken your jabs are, they're going to involve harming a relationship. So the best way to make sure that you have your thinking head back on, so I like to kind of alternate between, you know, emotional Rochelle and cerebral Rochelle. So if I'm emotional and I want to just, you know, give this person a piece of my mind, I do my choice of 3, which is I think of at least 3 responses. And if I can't think of 3 ways to respond, I know I'm still very emotional, which means I'm hung up on responding a certain way that's going to be very self-gratifying and is going to make me feel better in the moment, but potentially I might regret moving forward. So choice of 3 is really me being sort of grounded enough that I can think of at least 3 different ways to respond appropriately. And when I look at those 3 different responses, they're not just like better ways of telling this person off, right? So I in order to think of 3 well sort of structured responses, I need to like get out of emotional Rochelle and I need to be back in cerebral, like in the cerebral Rochelle, you know? My thinking hat needs to be on for me to think of 3 responses that, you know, state my position while still respecting the relationship and still not moving forward with sort of a hidden objective of self-gratifying myself by like throwing a couple jabs in there. So choice of 3 is very, very good, especially if you're, you know, fighting with a significant other, if you're fighting with a friend and all you want to do is get, you know, a quick little 1-2 in there, because it will feel good in the moment, but then you're going to have to backpedal and apologize. Always think to yourself, if you even can think up 3 responses, and if you can't, you know you're too emotional to engage, take a couple more deep breaths, maybe jog around the block. And if you can engage and you can come up with at least 3 different ways of how you're going to articulate that message, and they're not 3 ways of articulating, you know, an insult, there are 3 different ways of communicating truly your position in that situation, then you've got the right, then you're sort of in the right headspace to engage in that situation. So there you have it. Those are my 5 different strategies to stay grounded during stressful situations. And of course, let's close things off with a little stretch. All right, so I would like to do a side split stretching exercise with you. And again, like this will end in a side split, but I'm still working on my middle split, so I haven't been able to get to a stage where I can, you know, fully get myself down to the ground. But it's also a great opportunity to open your hip flexors and to make sure that you reduce stiffness and tension in your hips. And this is important because tension in your hips is negative energy and stress that you're retaining. And you want to make sure that you release that stress, release that tension, and release that negative energy out of your body because it tends to collect in your hip area. So let's get into the stretch. And again, quick disclaimer, I am not a certified yoga instructor, but I do follow a yoga instructor. I will provide the link to this specific video down below. It's actually a combination of 2 different stretches in one, but I only wanted to do sort of the middle split version of it. But you know what? You can stretch with me. I'm not perfect, but this can be a fun bonding exercise between the 2 of us. Let's get into it. Of the mat, sorry, and we're gonna leave the width of the mat, stepping your legs up to the side, slightly pigeon toeing your feet. Inhale up to the side, and then exhale all the way down into the wide-legged forward fold. And we're gonna try to bring our forehead down close towards the mat. So what you wanna try to do is try to keep your back elongated and try to get your forehead to touch the floor. Just breathe it out, going as deep as you can. Just breathe it out. Come up. We're going to go halfway. We're going to place our hands here and we're going to do a side stretch. So we're going to bring our leg down to this bent knee. And then we're going to switch to the other side. We're just doing a little stretch before we do the deeper stretches. Stretching out our inner thighs here. Great. So now we're gonna bend the right knee, and we're gonna keep our left leg extended, and then point our left toes and our knee towards the sky to make sure we don't jam our knee joint. Then you're gonna bring your left arm down, and then bring your right arm up to the sky. It's like, so this is like a twisted version of the single-legged frog. And you just want to go deeper into the left hip by way of stretch. We're just stretching the hip muscle here. Look up if you can, otherwise you can keep your gaze down to the ground. We're just going to hold it for a few seconds here. Just take a couple of deep breaths, or keep breathing, not just a couple of breaths. Feel it in your hip, or breathe into the hip. Okay, one more breath. Look down, hand down. And let's do the other side now. Go back into our wide-legged fold. And bend the left knee. We're going to do the same thing, so make sure the knee and the toes are pointed towards the sky. And then we're going to bring our right elbow down to the ground, the mat, sorry. And then lift our left arm up. So you're going to feel this right in your hip. And just breathe in deeply. Just feel this stretch in your inner thigh and your hip. Opening up the tension and the resistance in your hips. Bringing oxygen in your body, which gets rid of negative energy. Just keep breathing. And try to look up if you can, otherwise look down to the ground. Alright, you can look down. Bring your hand down. And we're going to go back into the forward fold. And then keep your hands on the ground. We're just going to do a wave. So bend your knees, bring your forehead down, and back up. So some movement and release in your hips. Let's do one more. Great. So now we're going to do the frog pose. Come down with our both knees. Flex both of your feet, then open up your knees as wide as you can. Make sure there's a 90-degree angle on both of your legs. Now you don't want to be too far forward or too far back. You want to be right in the center. And then come down to your elbows. It doesn't matter how high off the ground you are, you're going to let gravity do its magic here. So we're just going to stay here and breathe. And let gravity do its work. So just relax into the posture. Just relax and let your muscles to let go. With every exhale, you're just gonna think of letting go of all of the energy that no longer serves you. Just relax. Breathe. All right, let's come up. First on our hands, we push up. And then walk our knees closer towards the center. And then come back up into the wild-legged forward fold. So let's just release some tension in the hips by swaying side to side. Woo-hoo. And then come up halfway. And then exhale, come down to your elbows. And then you're gonna walk your feet as far as you can to both sides of the mat. Now, as I mentioned to you, I'm working on my middle split. I haven't reached my way to the ground, so we can do this together. Now you just wanna make sure that you're completely in the center of your body. You're not too far forward, you're not too far back, and you're just gonna hold and breathe. We're doing this together. Remember, discomfort is discomfort is negative energy leaving your body. You want the flexibility that comes from this. And just lean into it. A couple more deep breaths. Are you okay? All right, let's come up. Just first your hands, and then move heel toe back to your wide-legged forward fold. And then from here, bend your knees and roll up to standing, nice and slow. And then turn towards the front, plant your hands, and step back into your downward facing dog. Just walk it out. Letting go any soreness or sensations. And then hold. And then let's round through. Chaturanga Dandasana. Inhale to your upward dog. And then release back into the downward facing dog. Down to the floor. Great stretch, right? I love stretching with you all, and I guess I get to see how close I am to the ground for my middle split. For my middle split, I have been working on achieving this middle split for a few months now. So I know I'm closer than where I was before I started, but you know, still a long ways to go. So definitely for you, if you're just starting, don't be discouraged. Sort of increasing your flexibility is a great way to regain the range of motion that is lost by only sort of activating certain muscles in your legs. And again, you always want to make sure that your hips are limber and are loose and are moving. And that means that you're making sure that your hip flexors have that versatility of movement throughout the day. So this was the video for this week on mental wellness. I hope you enjoyed our tips, and I hope you enjoyed our stretching exercise. If you do have any suggestions of your own by way of how you stay grounded during stressful situations, I would love to hear from you. Or if you have different stretches that we can try out during our next mental wellness week, that would be really wonderful. And again, please do like, comment, and share this video. And until next time, have a great day. Bye.